Hi, so I'm Rohit.
And Bhairavi.
So, just a little bit about us since everybody's spoken about themselves. So, very quickly, we are just essentially two potters.
Here I would like to say that we are not related, we are just friends, we are not a couple. And I'm saying this because we get this a lot from people, people just assume, and people would be asking Rohit, we met your wife and we met your husband. So no, and we are not forever together. He has a life, I have a life, and we work together.
So through this presentation, we just figured that we should talk about some of the pet peeves that we have, like an opportunity, right? I mean, whatever one gets. So essentially, we started in 2014, and we had very different lives before becoming full-time potters. I used to be in making trailers for movies, where we used to be in advertising. So we had very disparate, very structured corporate lives. At some point, we figured that screw this shit, we'll do what we really want to do. It wasn't like we didn't like our jobs. Again, we loved our jobs. They were very nice. We just preferred pottery more. So we thought we'll set up a small studio where we'll try and do some good work. And the idea at that time was actually to just do a little bit of our work and to work with a lot of people who we could curate, which is why actually the name Curators of Clay, which started with us thinking that we'll do that. As we went along, we figured two things. One, we can't work with other people. We are annoying.
We are too strong personality.
Yeah, we'll just be really annoying. So we figured one is that. And the other thing was that we figured that we actually really like making what we do. So we figured while we can still market it, while we can still sort of try and sell really good handcrafted ceramics, we'll make it rather than take other people's stuff. So there's just two of us. We've just been joined by another young guy called Amay, who came to us to learn and then somehow stayed on. He's not left. What we do is beautiful functional ceramics. We focus on function purely because we feel that the coolest thing that we can do is make things that you all can use, and things that you all can use every day. Things that you all can connect with, things that you all can have an opinion about. You might not like a certain thing that we do, you might like a certain thing that we do. But the idea is that it's the only way we can, in a vague way, connect with the people who are buying our work. So we make only functional stuff. We've started dabbling in doing a bit of, sculpture, decor, but largely it still remains things that you can use. We work in stoneware and porcelain. This is just technical stuff for just a little bit. So we work in stoneware and porcelain. Everything is handcrafted from start to end. We make our own clay, we make our own glazes. Bhairavi surprisingly has a master's degree in biochemistry, which is good for glazes. So she makes all the glazes. I just go and do things like, hey, it's not blue, galat hai. We need a little bit of green blue banana, some such very vague sort of direction. But this is what we do. Everything, like I said, is made by hand. Everything is made at our studio in Gurgaon. Right now we don't work with external craftsmen or artisans. It's not that we haven't tried. We have, and we failed.
And that's a separate conversation altogether, yeah. So let's not go there.
So essentially what we call ourselves is the pursuit of beauty, peace and happiness. Purely because that was initially why we wanted to do this. Like we didn't really know what we wanted to do.
Yeah, it wasn't about, we want to put out these things, or there was no money goal or any money is important. I mean, I'm not saying that's not important, but when we started out, it was more of we want to make beautiful stuff and sell beautiful things to people. And we believe that once you have beauty automatically gives you peace. When you're holding a nice mug in your hand and talking to somebody, even if you're angry, you're not going to throw that mug to someone. So that's
if you want to throw it, you have to buy another one.
Yeah. So that was the idea for us, and thankfully for us, we are at a very beautiful place in Pune. So that adds to our peace and happiness when we work. So.
That essentially, again, just random, so you all know, it's a wedged bit of clay. It's called
so that's the first thing we do in morning when we start our work. We wedge our clay. It's spiral wedging, and so you're removing air bubbles and you basically making it homogeneous, and then you can start work.
this is some of the stuff that we've done. Again,
It's right now in use at various restaurants.
Just
so
a very nice, pretty picture. So what we thought of for Symmetry was we thought we'll start with the fact that, quite honestly, until Amishi gave us the brief and all, we weren't really even focusing on kya karte hain, what do we do it, how do we do it. So a lot of this is actually, a bit of it is retrofit. Okay? So Symmetry, we figured that, technically this is what it means. It means it's, even people say the prettiest people in the world are the ones who have the most symmetrical face. Apparently, the person who you're most attracted to, like, globally is supposed to be somebody who has like the exact dimensions on each side. That probably is all very true technically, and it does make sense. Because inherently what we do when we make things on the wheel, inherently it's symmetrical. You don't start with a symmetrical piece of...
I mean, you can't make anything asymmetrical on the wheel when you're working on the wheel, because it's driven by centrifugal force, and when you're working it will be symmetrical.
So see, the magic of pottery and all is lovely, but it's physics. So again, I mean, it's not rocket science. Yeah, like if you work at it hard enough, most people will be able to do it. Again, when you start off, it's perfectly symmetrical. Most times, you want a bowl to look perfectly symmetrical. You want it to look, a certain way. People, I mean, again, this is stuff that we've read, so it's not something that we've figured out ourselves. It's just a lot of reading with master potters.
And the thing is that when you use symmetrical pieces or very well crafted pieces, it gives you pleasure. It feels right in your hand. I don't know how to say it, but there are times when you pick up a piece and you know it's right. You can't say it in words at all.
Yeah.
So I think symmetry plays a role over there.
In that.
Yeah.
And the thing is that, so when you're looking at a bowl, most people don't seem to realize it, that the rim of the bowl is what you first look at as an eye thing. So the first thing that you see in a mug, the first thing that you see in a bowl, the first thing that you see in any I'm talking again very focused to functional ceramics, is the rim. And most people would say that a symmetrical rim, an even rim, is what draws them to a certain piece. It's only later that you start noticing that the side is a little dented, the left side is maybe a little more inside than outside, stuff like that. But the first thing that draws you to it is symmetry. And like I said, we start off with symmetry. Our next process, which is this is called trimming, when you trim off the excess clay after you've made a bowl or a mug or whatever. Again, inherently is to give it symmetry. So you're evening it out, you're smoothing it out. If there are any bumps, burrs, any aberrations, apart from of course taking out the extra clay and making it lighter, but you're giving it a form. The footring that we do on most of our pieces, again, even if the piece is wonky, even if the piece is a little like asymmetrical, not quite even, the footring will be perfectly symmetrical. At least that's the aim. I mean, that's the whole idea of doing something which is keeping it symmetrical. So in a very vague sense, for us as potters, when we start off, it's all really, really symmetrical. It's all, we are working with science, with a certain amount of physics, chemistry to try and sort of keep it all even. So like you see here is, again, if you stack up things, if they are not symmetrical, chances are that they won't stack up properly. Again, it's one of the things that you learn when you're doing functional ceramics, that if you're supplying to, let's say, a restaurant, most restaurants don't have place to keep 700 bowls alag. So they'll have it all stacked up in one place. So again, symmetry becomes important from a functional point of view, that you can't have a very asymmetrical piece. You can't just do humko ye thoda left mein bahar chahiye. It doesn't work that way. But the thing is, after this, what we figured again with our own practice is that a lot of times we end up changing this symmetry based on what we want it to feel like. So it's a lot of times, a lot of our work that you'll see now. Again, if you see, it's not been very many years in any sort of way. 4 years of running a studio is nothing. But from our first year to, let's say, our 5th year in running now, you'll see that there's a lot of change in the way we've evolved from perhaps being very purist, ye ekdam round chahiye, this mug needs to be exactly like this, the handle needs to be exactly 1/4 the area that the mug is taking. All of this, all of these sort of.
Yeah, I think intuition starts playing a lot of role in that. You start doing a lot of things subconsciously because you've been working day in, day out. And that's what has happened, and that's why that flamboyance or whatever comes in our forms will be a result of that. So more you work with your hand, more you do it, and more your personality will start coming out in the work that you do.
So going back to what the brief from Creative Mornings initially was, that how you would find some sort of connect with the chaos that we live in. Everybody's job is chaotic, including ours, man. Like, let nobody tell you that, oh, it's meditative. I mean, it's a job at the end of the day. So, but you start finding ways of connecting, and that's not always symmetrical. That sometimes changes. So some of the changes we can explain, or we can put in words. Other changes are honestly going to be, you look at a piece which is a little damaged or a little warped, and you won't feel it's wrong for whatever that inexplicable reason that's in your head, that you won't feel it's wrong. Like, for instance, if I was to take it back to the whole thing of people with absolutely perfect faces are prettier, sometimes a scar is damn sexy. Like, you just feel that this has got more character, it's added something to that personality, whatever it is. So for us, when we are making functional ceramics, proportion plays a huge role in what we are doing. Some of the proportion stuff that I'm trying to explain is very factual. Like, one of the first things way back when I started, I was in a place called Andretta in Himachal Pradesh, and somebody had ordered, I think, 40 soup bowls for a really small restaurant. And the potter who made them was 19 piece zyada. Like, thoda sa hi to zyada hua hai. But that guy came back and he rejected the whole order because he was saying, you're saying 10% hi to zyada hai. But if I'm giving 10% soup extra with every serving, then it's affecting my business in a much bigger way. And quite honestly, somebody had told me this. I really didn't think that that's such a big deal. Because again, you don't think of proportion, with that sort of, a lot of times you're like, theek hai na, so it's like, it's a little, thoda 1 centimeter badi hai. But it makes a huge difference. So in a similar way, proportion of a mug, a proportion of anything that you're making, vis-a-vis also its different elements, makes a difference. You'll want a handle which is snug for one kind of form, but at the same time you might want a handle which is a little further out, which is not symmetrical. You look at the mug and you'll be like, ye handle thoda bada hai. But the whole point is that when you put all your fingers through it, and if you've got a really hot cup of coffee or tea or anything else, it's not going to scare your knuckles.
Not just scary, even usage, like, when you're picking it up, it needs to be really well, like you hold it really nicely, like it's not tilting to one side or there is off balance in terms of weight or anything. So that you need to be really careful of.
So for instance, in a form like a teapot, which is basically an assembly of different parts, every single part in this is made differently. The body is made separately, the spout is made separately, the lid, the handle. Sometimes it isn't symmetrical. It doesn't look symmetrical. Like, for instance, a dripless spout is something that every potter is like dying to get. Okay, you need to pour a jug, you need to pour a teapot, and it shouldn't drip. Now, if you think about it, initially you think that if you turn it upwards, that's how it's going to work. But if you see enough of them, you will realize that actually you turn it downwards. The last bit of the spout, if it's turned downwards, the last drop falls in whatever you're pouring and the rest goes back in. There's many factors to it. There's the glaze can't stick, it has to be smooth, the cut has to be sharp. So there's a whole bunch of things, but sometimes it's also counterintuitive. Like, you're thinking, the first time I made a spout, I'm like, so if it's straight up, like it won't drip. But actually those are the ones which end up dripping.
It was found down there, so everything just spilled out.
Yeah, all the spout blowed up.
Yeah.
Again, it's proportion. It doesn't always look symmetrical. It probably also isn't symmetrical a lot of times. But you've changed things in order to make it work. And sometimes it's pretty, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just pure functional. Like, it's not going to look pretty. It's not going to look fantastically awesome. But when you use it, that I prefer using this because this is working better. The other thing for us in Symmetry is balance. Now balance, any art director worth his salt will spend hours on, like all my initial, like my previous life, there were art directors saying, "Kya bapas, there must be balance in your life." So there'll be like all of this will happen. So there'll be, copy nahi hai, art idhar, all of that. ये तू copy ज़्यादा लिख दिया, balance नहीं हो रहा है, all that. So copy निकाल दे, like अरे ये कैसा निकाल? नहीं निकाल कुछ भी. So all of that. So for us, in pottery terms, balance is twofold. One is of course your color, your glaze, the art part of it. You need that to look a certain way. That's really subjective. I might think something looks really pretty because it's half blue, half light blue, half white, and I think this is balanced. Somebody might say, no, this is completely like rubbish. Very sort of your own thing you're doing. But the balance that we are also looking at is, again, when you're using things, because a lot of this is, there's a handle, there's a ring, a waiter is serving something. So you'll see a waiter, a lot of times they're using three things, they have two things on their forearm, the third thing is, you can't have something which is not balanced properly, even if it means that the symmetry needs to be a little off. So for example, if you have a serving bowl with the handle on one side, but you want it to be a little bigger so that when he holds it, it doesn't wobble. When he's carrying two things, he's figuring out that it's not imbalanced, one side is not toppling over. So for us, these are things which again came into consideration after we started working closely with restaurants, because you had people telling you this. So I'm sure that anybody who's a trained product designer will know this. But a lot of this will also come in from somebody who uses
this. Experience, when people are using it and they feel that.
So for instance, a cup is a cup, a mug is a mug, but there will be ones which have better balance. There will be ones where holding it up to your lips and drinking from a particular one works better. Maybe because of the position of the handle, could be lower, could be further up, could be the distance from the cup. Each cup form will have its own sort of way that it works. But for us, the thing is that it needn't necessarily look symmetrical. Like it's not something that you can draw a line straight in and you'll have a division of A side equal, A side equal. It doesn't always work like that. This is stuff again we're saying from the change that has happened. Okay, the first year we made everything which was text. Okay, so this should be like this, the handle should be here, handle should be like 1/4 inch away.
But you start eyeballing it, after a while, so that's what.
Some of the stuff is functional aberration. So sometimes you want, so for example, this was a serving bowl which somebody had commissioned, and they wanted a really small lug because they wanted their server to only place it from one side. They didn't want two lug. Our instinctive thing was दो लग देंगे ना, एक side पे, like a deikchi or a. But they were like, hey, we want it slightly different because the guy is only going to serve it. He's going to take it out and he's going to place it on the counter and it has to go tuck. And then the person can eat it, not eat it, whatever, like a ramen bowl kind of a thing. Again, didn't look symmetrical at all, but completely worked. This again had stuff like you had to balance out the lug, you have to make sure that the lug, while it's small and flush to the thing, it's still enough for you to hold. Sometimes we didn't glaze the inside because it's easier to hold an unglazed pot. There's a bit of texture. So if there's a server who's obviously overworked and tired and really pissed off at the end of the day, he's not going to think about it, but it's just easier for him. So even like the underneath of plates, there are some where if you have a foot ring, you have a place to hold it. But if you don't have a foot ring, if you have a flat thing, we don't glaze the bottoms, or we'll give it some sort of concentric circle, something which again is purely for the server. It may sound a little what do you care? But the waiters are the guys who are using our stuff the most here. So the chefs are one part of it, but the guys who are actually using it the most are the guys who are stacking it, the guys who are making it.
The best feedback has come from them.
And it's not always symmetrical. It's sometimes odd. For instance, this cup, the handle. This is the picture which we took in order for the handle to not look as outlandish as it actually did. It's really that. The handle is completely not in symmetry with the cup.
But then again, you need to have a cup. This is a tiny cup, and that's why you can have that larger handle, and yet handle it really well, you know, so that's important.
Also, it feels good because it's got a long, it's like, you give somebody a long enough lever and they'll whatever top of the world or that same. So it's literally that. It's like, it's a long enough lever for you to use a really small cup really well. The one on that side is a spiral cup. Again, it's not symmetrical at all. It's not only is it not symmetrical, even if you hold it, you'll realize that your fingers will go in some places, but it's spiral. So when you're throwing it on the wheel, eventually you make it spiral. It's a great cup to hold. Like most people who've held one of these cups, it's like, this is damn nice to hold. If you look at it from a purist point of view and say that the rim is a little off, the handle is a little wonky, but it works really well. Not only does it work well, I think within those cups, we really would like people when we are presenting anything to touch and feel before they take it home. Which is why online becomes such a weird place to be, because pictures can show you anything. If you saw this mug in real life, it doesn't look anything like that. And this was the earlier time when we used to cheat, and we said, thoda sa let people at least think that it is, like we said, it's all symmetrical, it's all pretty, it's all done the way it should be done. But it's not. Another thing that we've learned again over the years is that the weirdest things seem to complement each other. So when people talk about we extended the absolute technical meaning of symmetry to also be matching. So if it's matching, a lot of times people want the matching glaze. Matching glaze is, again, it's a misnomer because there's no glaze. You can match anything you want. And there'll be times when you'll see really different glazes, really different textures coming together in a way that you didn't expect them to. You didn't think that these would look good. You didn't think that these two styles which were, so for instance, the jug is what we make because we don't like making stuff which is very curvy, So we make straight, sort of more clean lines. And the cup and saucer is very classical. The cup and saucer is very, your regular cup and saucer, including the saucer being, we prefer to have our saucers slightly bigger because the whole idea is that if you have a saucer, at some point you should pour chai into it and drink it with a lot of noise. But effectively, these were more classical, but they went really well with those jugs. And the person who again had taken the commission wasn't initially convinced. It was like, "Arey, matching." That matching has now become a thing where honestly we can't tell you either. I mean, if you ask me, like, do you think this will match? I believe the only way to know it is to put it together and see.
But for us, it's been nice that a lot of our clients take a lot of different kind of things. We say that take different forms, different glazes. So we arrive at a color palette for them, and everything is mixed up. And on table, it really looks beautiful because it's not just one homogeneous thing. But when you put it together, it's really nice. So if you see, this is very, very different, all of them. But together, they look nice.
If each of these was separately kept, you probably wouldn't like it at all because they do nothing to you. Like a lot of times, it's an arrangement done in a certain manner. Again, not always symmetrical, not always matching, not always following the rules of any sort of design. But they look lovely. A lot of times when you see this in a disparate way, if you take these away from each other, they won't look nice. Or it won't look as nice. Like sometimes things just look great when it's together in a certain way. So this was probably one of the few things that we've gone where we moved away from making functional tableware, and this was done from mass, which is whatever something.
Yeah.
Where the idea was again these were ceramic apples. Again, here the thing was honestly when we gave it to them, and when we had just given them and they said, "Oh, pieces we चाहिए, वो pieces we करके." So we were like, okay, cool. So we had fun making the pieces because it was. I mean, how many people asked you to make decayed apples? Nobody. So my only contention that time because Bhairavi was there, he was like, "Arey, apple क्या बनाना है?" So I was like bananas they want. So like small muscles. We are not making So when they took it initially, we really had no idea what they were going to do with it. Sometimes again for us it was just random. We're making great fun because we got to do whatever we wanted, the way we wanted, literally whatever we wanted. So essentially they were like, no, the idea is to have a ripe, perfect apple and also have decayed apples which have run through their life course. It was very philosophical. It was very nice on paper. When we were doing it, we were like, none of this is right. But when they put it up and they sent us the picture, we were like, man, this looks done.
They served one course even on their half apple, so on every table they had that, and there was food served.
Food served, right? Yeah. We didn't, again, it doesn't sort of subscribe to anything. There is no symmetry. So there's color blocking in one vague way. There's none of those.
But again, it comes back to at a glance, you think it's symmetry.
You think it looks nice. You think it looks nice, and again, it doesn't. I don't know whether you move that one out of the way, whether it would suddenly look like it's incomplete. All the things that people use. But what we've realized over the last 4 years that for a lot of us who don't work with our hands, it's becoming increasingly difficult to, which is why then you'll subscribe to a rule. You'll start saying, Acha, this is how it should be done, this is what I read, this is what and it's always great to know the rules when you start out. But we think that for us as well, just because we've started working with our hands and we now know that, okay, it doesn't always need to look a certain way, it doesn't have to be a certain way. For it to look really pretty, I mean, honestly, we didn't think it would look this pretty at all. One thing which we always look for, at least in our work, or even perhaps in the way we want to be perceived, is that we'd like our work to be really quiet. That we try not to make it. Of course, I'll say all of this, and then 1 month later, somebody will say, hey, gold color ka na? And we'll have to do it because there is today. But effectively, we try and make things which are very quiet, which have a personality, but which won't overpower whatever else is happening in that room. When you're going to eat food, you want to eat food at the end of the day. The restaurant is known for the food it makes. The ceramics play a huge role because apart from the food, you're spending a lot of time staring at what's on the table. So whether it's a plate, whether it's a bowl, whether it's a spoon, you're genuinely spending a lot of time with it. So it's nice when now people go to a certain restaurant, even though whether there are people who know about us, Instagram has been incredibly kind to us, that people call us and say, oh, I ate there and I knew it was yours, and I checked and it had the C, it was yours. It's nice. It's nice to have that feeling. But we also wanted to keep the chef is the star. We are supporting cast.
We say that we provide canvas to the chefs, and that's why it's a beautiful canvas, but canvas.
But it's a canvas, and it's up to the chef.
And we are very clear on that.
We are very clear. We are very, very clear that it's supporting cast. At no point will somebody will say, "Khana bakwas tha, but kya plate tha?" Nobody's ever said. Nobody. They might actually say, "Khana was acha tha, plate wasn't bad," which is great, which is fine. We're getting there, but it's unlikely that somebody will say, "What a great cup, lousy coffee." With our glazes, and actually Bhairavi doesn't really like this word. This word, this is like acting like hum bahut cool hai types. But we genuinely feel that our glazes are far more flamboyant than what they should be, because we hate flat colored things.
Yeah.
Like if it's red, it needs to be all kinds of red. It can't be like one dark red. If you want that, you can. There's a nice commercial factory making those somewhere, and sure, go for it. But so all our glazes, which we just very quickly go through, again,
so they are developed to give you variation. They are developed to give you slight change in the texture and everything. I mean, that's like here also. So these are not cracks. These are just superficial crackle effect. Because people think that they're cracks or anything. So it's designed, or even these dots, and also the way you mix glazes, the way you apply glazes, it's meant to give you variation. I mean, you won't find a flat glaze in our studio ever.
So, for example, we did the pink for someone, and the idea was again our initial reaction was that pink is.
I had refused to make pink for I think 1.5 years. Like
Because
couple of people
yeah,
had come to us and I
pink
said, I'm not making a pink
rubbish.
flat one, so it's not.
Like so, but then finally when we did make it, again it's not your usual pink. People have all sorts of names for it. We are very happy. Some people saw them pink. Somebody called it blush. People are great copywriters. Everybody is okay. But for us it was just very simple. We didn't want it to be a flat, boring pink. We didn't. We certainly didn't want it to be cotton candy pink because I mean just looks ugly. And the idea again was that we keep it. I mean, coming back to what the topic at hand, it's totally asymmetrical. There's nothing symmetrical about it at all. Textures was again something that initially, so a lot of people seem to have a problem with textures on their plates. I understand that it's difficult to clean. It is difficult to clean. It takes a lot more to, especially with Indian food. Like our food is probably not meant to be had on a textured plate. But with more people eating different kinds of food, more people being open to other things, texture is something that we realized that we can actually offer people. Again, it's not always smooth. It's not always perfectly, it's not always lovely. Like technically, if you touch it, some people might hate it. Some people won't like the feel of a roughened sort of texture to their fingers. Some people love it. But whether you like it or you're not, the idea is that it's a tactile medium. You need to hold it. You need to engage with it like you would with anything else. And which is the only way you would realize whether in your head, whether it's symmetrical, it's not symmetrical, whether it somewhere connects with something in your head. A lot of people liken it to a lot of things. Yeah, like we've had the chef at Mask say all sorts of fancy things like, ये ना मेरे नानी के हाथों का जो wrinkles होता है, it's lovely. If it reminds you of that, great. If it doesn't, that's also fine. But the fact is that it's not always the way it's meant to. For example, the color white. For a lot of time, people ask us. The first problem with restaurants for us has been that everybody wants, like we said, symmetrical white plates. That's what most people want. Even if they want them to be handcrafted, made by two idiots sitting in one studio somewhere in the middle of nowhere, they still want it to be white. They still want it to be, So then we had to cheat our way into this, where we said, okay, we'll make it white, but we'll make it our own white. So it'll never be flat. It'll never look like a traditional plate that most people are used to. It probably won't, on one side it will look off-white, on another side it will look whiter than white. But it won't be your plain boring white. Speaking of glazes, we put this in purely because this is a completely unglazed piece of wood.
Inside is
slightly glazed because again, this was again feedback where people said that when you eat against a very rough thing with a spoon, it makes a lot of noise. Fine dining places want it to be quiet. People want to, enjoy the moment, etc. But the idea here was to make it completely unglazed. So the outside is, I think we've got something you can feel and touch. The outside is totally unglazed. The idea again there was to give people a sense of sensorial kind of thing. Also, at the restaurant, they encourage the guests to hold the whole thing in their hand and eat it. So while it's kept on one little piece of cloth, which they haven't put out here, but a little piece of cloth, the server actually goes out and says, why don't you hold the bowl and eat it? Because again, it's a way of engaging with everything that you're doing. You're not just eating off a plate on a table, you're holding it, you're touching it, you're feeling it. All of this was made by hand, not even on the wheel. So it's
a pinched, most rudimentary method that, when pottery started, probably people used it.
Yeah, same restaurant, a different thing again. Here, the tumblers, there's a tumbler which is again asymmetrical. The plate is very symmetrical. The plate is made on the wheel and kept symmetrical. This was again going back to what we started with, that sometimes the arrangement helps make it look nice, helps you sort of connect with it. Of course, the food is damn good, so that really helps. So as I said before, we're going to use this to generally, rant about a few things. You guys are a captive audience. You can't go anywhere. You can, but so these are some of the things that we're really tired of hearing. So maybe if people watch this video, we'll all go out and talk to people will stop calling us up and saying these things. Like, welcome to call us up and talk about pottery. We can do that all day, all night. But for instance, like wabi sabi, nobody knows what it is.
I don't think anybody
Nobody.
understands
We
wabi
though
sabi,
certainly
yeah.
don't know what it is. It's very evolved. Okay, it's far too evolved. I think we are still pretty Neanderthal to figure out what it is. So a lot of people pass off anything with wabi sabi. We've had restaurants come to us and say that for our new collection now, make it all weird like wabi sabi. Weird like wabi sabi is basically an oxymoron. The whole idea of wabi sabi is supposed to be that it's asymmetrical, it's not perfect, but there is a sense of balance, proportion, everything that we spoke about before this. But I don't think you can term our work wabi sabi. We personally wouldn't want to. Maybe in a marketing brochure, but otherwise,
Yeah.
I don't think so. Glaze versus paint. We glaze our work. Any ceramicist. I mean, there are people who paint, but mostly ceramicists glaze it. Whereas a glaze, it goes back into the kiln and it is fired and it melts, and that's how you get the color. So it's not paint. We don't paint over any of our pieces. A lot of people think it's paint, which is again, a lot of it is because people don't know. But there's also a lot of people who insist कि नहीं ये paint आपका गलत है. So it's again one of those. Pottery versus ceramics. This is like
That is never ending.
because
Yeah.
we'll have what do you do? Pottery. नहीं हम ceramic के लिए ढूंढ रहे. We make ceramics. नहीं pottery नहीं करते आप. So
See, I'll tell you the difference that there is no difference actually. All pottery is anything which is fired beyond 700 degrees, where clay changes its character to become something which will last for millions of years, then it becomes ceramics. So when clay is applied heat, is ceramics. So pottery and ceramics are both same. You can use that and all, but we go through lots of things and we are trying to convince people. No.
No, because you can't win, right? Somebody calls you and says you're looking for ceramics. Yeah, but इसमें लिखा है आप potter हो. Put the phone down. Somebody else calls up and says, अच्छा आप pottery करते हो तो आपका ceramic नहीं होगा. And you're like, यार रुक सुन तो ले मेरी बात.
Yeah, we got people to ask us what material do you need?
Yeah, what
material? Curators of clay.
Yeah. You want to buy POP, Also, bake versus fire.
You bake a cake.
You bake a cake. You fire a pot. Like again, it's also because I get it. It's inherently very similar. It's like fire, but 350 degrees, 1220 degrees. थोड़ा सा slight फर्क. Because we will also have people coming and saying, can you put it in the oven? Yes, you can put all our pottery in the oven.
Yeah.
You can bake it because it's already baked at 1220 degrees. So this is the whole thing, the bake and fire problem, which is, I mean, like I said, it's just one of the annoying things. This is porcelain. We just put this in because it's a pretty picture.
Even the next one is pretty picture.
Yeah. Also because again, not symmetrical. Amishi, I'm just dragging it. Force fitting. There's nothing to that. And again, porcelain because we just thought it's a pretty picture. So that's us, and that was our 20 minutes. I hope you had a good time. Any questions you all want to like say that, kya hai, ye wo kya hai, please ask.
Yeah.